to talk about on another Extra Bases with Bristol and Booth. Jeremy's in Houston. I'm in Houston. And the world is spinning on its axis, which is good.
That's right.
First thing we need to talk about, though, is Hank Aaron. I recall seeing him in person in 2017 in LA at the World Series when he was about to present Jose Altuve with the Hank Aaron Award. And for some reason, were you standing next to me in the 2019 World Series? Didn't we see him go by on a golf cart for the same award presentation?
We did, in the tunnel. Yeah, we did. Yeah, it's Hank Aaron, man, you know, what he meant to the game, right? There's not enough words that in the English language or any other language talk about what Hank Aaron meant to baseball. The way he performed on the field, obviously, the way he did it for years, not just the numbers, but, you know, the time it took to put that up, the model of consistency, the character with Mr. Aaron, the way he extended himself to people, his post-career. You always felt, and I only had a couple of really, really brief interactions with him, right? But, you know, you always felt by watching him, just this aura of and part of the term when I say this of majesty. It was just like, man, this guy is just so great, and thank you so much for being you, and wow. And to have him pass after such a tough 2020, we start off 2021 with Don Sutton and then Hank Aaron, you know, feels like a changing of time in baseball. Not just like a passing of the torch, that's happened long ago, but a changing of time.
Are you able to share your interactions, like what the setting was, what it was about?
Yeah, I mean, once I was a kid, it was like, you know, Jeremy, this is Hank Aaron, and, you know, hi, Jeremy, nice to meet you, and hi, Mr. Aaron, and, you know, it was one of those. And another time, you know, 15 years later, 18 years later, wherever it was, we just happened to be in the same place, same ballpark, and, you know, introduced himself. You know, Jeremy says, Hank Aaron. I'm Mr. Aaron. Nice to meet you. I mean, it was one of those. It was just good to see you, son. And, you know, thanks for, you know, all you know, I know you had a good career in the game, and, you know, just brief 5 minutes of talking. It was just, he didn't have to take his time. Everybody wanted his time. I mean, you know, even with Bonds, you know, the type of guy he was with that just goes back to even when Bonds broke his record. And there's this question, is Hank Aaron going to be there, right? And he wasn't there, but there was this message on the scoreboard that played about congratulating Barry for moving forward. Never spoke a bad word about him. Never said anything about all the rumors that circulated. It was all about positivity and class and character, and that's how he treated everybody who came across.
One thing that I'm really, having watched a number of little pieces about Hank's career, Mr. Aaron's career, the one thing that I'm just so glad was that he was so giving of his time that these stories, we're not going to lose them forever, that they're going to keep being told from these videos and these interviews, because I get so upset when I see people who pass away and perhaps there's stories that have never been unlocked. And it just seems like Hank Aaron was so giving right up until the end, of giving his time and his willingness to share his trials, the tribulations, the successes, everything that he went through. And it's just so commendable.
He, you know, he's one of the few people that I've ever met or I've ever heard of or even been around where he's going to transcend, you know, centuries. Like, he's iconic. You know, it's, you hear the stories of Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and guys like that. And to be honest with you, nothing against any of them, Mickey Mantle, but they pale in comparison to who Hank Aaron was and the way he has touched so many different people across the game. So, you know, the game and humanity, I'd say, just again, paying it forward as an ambassador of who we are as people, lost a lot today. But as you say that, you can easily celebrate all he was and what he meant to people for, you know, decades ago forward.
Dusty Baker, you know, he's somebody I really feel for at this time when you consider he's lost Hank Aaron, he's lost Don Sutton, he's lost Tommy Lasorda, he's lost Lou Brock, all these players that he was teammates with, friends with, managed. I mean, I think we've mentioned during the season a couple of times, like, can we get your thoughts? And I think he even said, I don't even like picking up the phone anymore because I just don't know who's going to be next. Dusty Baker's statement was from the Astros: Hank Aaron was the most important influence on my life next to my dad. He was the best person that I ever knew and the truest, most honest person that I ever knew. He taught me how to be a man and how to be a proud African American. He taught me how important it was to give back to the community, and he inspired me to become an entrepreneur. Hank impacted my life, my family, my world, both on and off the field. He was a great man. Can't say it any better than that. Can't say it any better than that.
That's basically all you could ever ask for. And again, nothing else could do him justice. And that's an excellent job by Dusty Baker. The best thing about Hank Aaron is, regardless of whether he's with us or not on this planet, the stories of who he is and the messages that he put out there will be told for generations. So congratulations, if you will, to Mr. Aaron on impacting millions and millions and millions of people, because if that's what he set out to do, he did it.
Speaking of impact players, the Astros unfortunately appear to have lost George Springer. The deal to the Toronto Blue Jays, tough for Astros fans to swallow, but if I'm George, man, what an opportunity. I think this is a great place for him to land, because it kind of reminds me of those younger Astros teams that were coming up that he was a part of. Now he's going to be the veteran presence in the clubhouse.
Yeah, we talked, I don't know if it was the last one we did, one before that. We talked about George and we talked about Toronto, right? We talked about proximity to Connecticut and, easy plane flights and able to get back and forth. And, obviously Toronto's a great place to play. It's a great place to hit. He's got a good nucleus. They paid him. It's extremely attractive. That I thought he was going to sign with Toronto, much earlier. And what struck me was the timing of this, because the day prior was when the Mets had their fiasco, right? So it's the Mets, it's the Blue Jays, and hey, it's the Mets and the Blue Jays and the Mets, and we're going back and forth, and all of a sudden we have a text issue, let's say, and then we have a text issue, and then he's a Blue Jay the next day, right? It's going to leave. Look, it's going to leave its impact in multiple places. Okay, it's going to leave its impact here in Houston first and foremost, because they still have some good players here, and it's not like his team is a complete teardown. They still have some good players. But Springer was the guy in my mind who, and as much as I still say it's Altuve's team, Springer was a guy in my mind you could always count on to say the right thing, to live with character, to execute on the field, to come up with that, that important impact type at bat when he needed it. Such a dangerous player, enough of an old school throwback and still embracing of the future and where we are today. You can't measure what his impact was in the clubhouse. And, of course, I'm going to say this because it's true, drafted in 2011 by Bobby Heck and his staff when they were here. That's the type of guys that Bobby built and put around players. So for him to end up in Toronto is a huge loss for Houston, but it's the right step for both clubs, both franchises at this point, with the Astros direction and also where the Blue Jays are going. In the third city, it leaves a hole in, is New York. They badly need a right-hand hitting bat, badly need an outfielder. He seemed to be a center fielder, seemed to be a perfect fit. They would have had to give up a draft pick, but Alderson didn't seem to want to pay. I mean, that's the bottom line. He's going to go with his guys, and he's going to be a little more economical with things like that. And I guess didn't feel that George was worth the money, but I also got to believe George, having just come off the Astros scandal, this can't be. And I got to say this: the Astros cheating scandal, having dealt with what he dealt with last year from start to finish, regardless of the pandemic, all of that chaos that he had dealt with. The last thing George Springer wanted to do was go into New York into more chaos with what happened with their general manager and more things with Sandy Alderson not knowing what he's going to be surrounded. And and I can't say for sure because I wasn't in the conversation, but it would shock me if George didn't pick up the phone and call Bobby Barrett and Casey Close with Excel and say, that's it. I'm going to Toronto, get it done. And he did.
Your best guess, will the Astros try and replace Springer with in-house, lesser known free agent, or a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr.?
I'm going with Jackie Bradley Jr. And I'm saying that because I think with some of the other moves that they've made, he's going to fit cost-wise. He's going to fit, with contract length. He's going to be looking for a year, maybe two. Jackie is to kind of rebuild his value a little bit more, which I don't understand because the guy's a pretty good player. So I don't understand why people see him sometimes the way they do. I think this is a good place to play in what I would call hide in plain sight type of area. I mean, Houston, you can hide here in plain sight, man. You can perform and the fans will love you and they'll be behind you. And sometimes you can get away from the national media a little bit sometimes here. It's just the way it is. And I feel like that would be a good fit for both sides. And there's no draft pick attached. The Astros, having losing the draft picks that they did from the cheating scandal, just got one back with Springer, right? They just got one back. So they're in a bet, and I think actually 21 is the last year, right? They lost it in 20 and losing 21. So they just got their 21 pick back. So they're in a better spot, the Astros are, if they just sign a guy like JBJ to still stay competitive with the nucleus they still have here with a Bregman, Correa, Altuve, and of course the guy they just re-signed, which we'll talk about in a second. That offensive nucleus, Jackie Bradley fits.
That guy you wanted to mention or talk about is Michael Brantley.
Yep.
There was talk that he was heading to Toronto and then slam on the brakes. Apparently he's returning to Houston, and we can say that with, I think, some certainty when you look at some of the tweets by Carlos Correa, Miles Straw, and Lance McCullers, all of them extremely excited that Uncle Mike is coming back. Are you surprised that he's decided to return? Because when I look at the contract, if it's 2 years and $32 million, which I believe is what he had before, I think that's really good for the Astros. I think they're paying about market price.
Funny thing about Michael Brantley, and stop me if you've heard this before, but Michael Brantley was drafted by the Brewers, right? What was that, 2006, maybe somewhere in there, 5?
Before your time there, obviously.
Yeah, before my time, but not before Bobby Heck was the East Coast crosschecker and supervised that selection as well. So bringing it back to the center, Michael Brantley coming back to Houston is a good deal for both sides. Great place to hit, knows the city, knows the fans, comfortable, professional hitter, fits in a lineup that still has a chance to be pretty good. I mean, it's not like they lost Springer now. They bring back Michael Brantley. That really lessens the blow. You can't replace George Springer, but it lessens the blow.
If they lost both of them, it would have been bad news.
Trouble, right. And so I feel like that him coming back here allows the Astros to be really a lot more competitive in this market, coming off a pandemic with the losses that we're hearing clubs had and how contracts are going. To be able to secure him for the same money he's had the last 2 years is really good for both, right? It's good for both.
And that's really, when you look at Springer's deal, as I said on KHOU 11 News, it's not about the money. Okay, it's always about the money. But when you consider that George was able to get 6 years at an average of 25 mil per, I mean, that is really one of the great all-time deals for a center fielder. When you also factor in the fact of the claims of the economic climate that Major League Baseball is facing. And now, again, those are claims. When you look at some of the money still being thrown around, I think you got to say, really, are these guys crying poor for what reason? But anyhow, I think that's really one of the best deals a player has seen.
Yeah, it's fitting, and it's good to see the Astros step up and do what they needed to do to make sure that they stayed, competitive, right? If you lose Springer and Brantley, it's a lot worse than just losing Springer. Brantley's another guy. You say they're referring to him as Uncle Mike, right? He's another good clubhouse guy, another good leader, somebody who can steady the ship. This club, while a different club, and the steam has left a little bit, from the train that was doing all the anti-Astros cheating antics. This coming year, they're going to play with fans. Okay, now whatever that is, it's supposed to be on time as of right now, but they're going to play with fans, and this isn't going to go away. So the more steadying influences they can have, a Dusty Baker, a Michael Brantley, the better it is for everybody to have that happen. They need people here who are going to be able to help lead this team through grace. Correa grew up last year, give him credit. Bregman grew up a little bit, give him credit. Altuve's kind of kept his stuff intact, and he is who he is. You either believe it or you don't. But it's a good fit for everybody. It's a good contract for everybody, and those type of deals are the ones you get happy about because both sides won.
And I believe that Jason Castro is reportedly returning. He was the Astros' first-round draft pick out of Stanford many, many years ago. Now coming back to, I don't want to say split time with Maldonado. It will probably be 65-35, something like that. But there's another steadying influence and a guy who can, he can hit the ball out of the ballpark from time to time. So I think that's a good deal too. Jason
Castro, good player, had a good career. Another character guy. There's a trend here, right? Another character guy, another performer, somebody who is consistent, veteran leadership. Also drafted by guess who?
Initials are BH.
Yeah, Bobby Heck in the first round in 2008, right? So he was, when the impact that guy's had on these franchises, it's ridiculous. Anyway,
yet no one other than you and a few others, few people talk about it. It's really one of the game's craziest stories that just get overlooked. That's the right word. It's really an overlooked story.
Yeah, it is. And Bobby's not a self-promoter. But James Click knows who he is, and Eric Neander knows who he is, right? And Chaim Bloom knows who he is, and Andrew Friedman knows who he is. And the people who have gone on to do great things, I'll give this guy credit. I give him credit for being a mentor to me all the time, and I'm not afraid to say that. Guys deserving of a general manager job. Heck, there was even a story that ran for a little bit in the New York Post that had the title "Heck Yeah" on the front of that with his picture, because that was the information that was out there. He was it ran for a couple hours. He was going to be the Mets general manager. Didn't happen. Didn't go that way. And obviously they're still looking for another one after hiring who they did. But Bobby gets those type of guys. And so his impact is still felt. Now it's felt in Toronto, Tampa Bay, and back in Houston, with Correa, who's another one of his picks. And now with Castro, McCullers is one of his picks. And now Castro coming back. So, Jason Castro and Maldonado are good compliments. They're going to help each other offensively, defensively. It's a good balance. Castro can play. He can hit. He can do some things that with the bat. Maldonado obviously is a 70 defender and a former Gold Glove winner. And I think that's in today's day and age of catching, we're finding guys that we call caddies, right? That are caddying each other. And this is a good fit for the Astros again. So, James Click, having grown up in that Tampa Bay school while those guys were there, is doing a really good job as their GM. He's bringing the right guys back. He's putting the right staff in place. And, as critical as I was on the previous regime for what they weren't doing and how they were, this guy's doing a good job. He's doing a good job so far. And for the city of Houston, that's going to be fun, because eventually it's going to get back to, or it could be sooner rather than later, what they're used to seeing now, which is winning baseball.
And here's why I also like the Jason Castro signing. When you look at the impact that Maldonado had on those kids last year, I don't know if those pitchers would have performed at the level they did. I'm not saying they wouldn't perform, but at the level they did, especially in the postseason, without a veteran steadying influence like Martin Maldonado. I'm not saying Garrett Stubbs isn't a quality catcher, but Jason Castro is now another guy who's been there, done that. And when you consider that those kids were force-fed last year, and we always hear about sophomore slumps, with fans in the stands and everything else, these kids, these young pitchers, they're going to be facing things that they haven't seen thus far in their big league career. And I don't think Martin will have the pressure now that I have to be there in every single inning of every single game. Now you've got a guy like Castro who can take the baton and work his magic behind the plate and settle these kids down and the ones that are coming up, because, it's one thing when teams haven't seen you for the first time, but then when they get to see you a little bit, as we saw with some of these guys last year, again, I just think it's a smart decision to have a guy like Jason Castro as your, okay, we'll call him number 2, but probably more like a 1A.
Right. No, I know. I think that's right on. I feel like Castro's at that point in his career where that fits for his abilities at, and probably what his body is telling him too. But it's got a chance to be another impactful move that probably a little under the radar at the moment, but it's going to be an impactful move for the club. So good job.
All right. Well, we covered Springer, Castro, and of course the late great Hank Aaron. We've got to do this more often.
You do.
But you've been traveling a lot, so
I'm back in the great city of Houston.
Driving. I don't want people to, very safe and things like that. And
I've been COVID tested quite a bit. I'll tell you that.
How many times have you been tested, do you think?
5.
How many?
5.
5.
All set.
I've only been tested once, and that was before a medical procedure. Everything's fine. Yeah, that was the only time. And to be honest with you, the thing up the nose, I'd heard really bad things about it, but it wasn't as uncomfortable or painful as I thought it would be, which I was very happy about. So
I had one that tickled me that I sneezed for 10 minutes straight.
that's the one. Yes, that's the one I had.
I was like, wait a minute. So
the eyes get watery, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm excited for baseball season. We're in full swing, and spring training is what, a month away now?
Yes. So. I was on a call with James Click. He was speaking to the Houston chapter of the Society for American Society, the SABR. And he said the trucks were going to leave February 4th, I think, is when they were going to pack up the trucks and head to the ballpark of the Palm Beaches.
Well, can't wait for them to do it, and can't wait to start getting baseball back underway. And looking forward to being back here in Houston now full time and getting to it.
All right, Jeremy. Until next time. Talk to you.